So, Rob, do you have many friends?
What's your definition of many?
I think when you're early 20s, you haven't had enough life experience to kind of have any strong opinions on things and strong thoughts and strong likes and strong dislikes. So, like, if I said, do you want to go to watch football? I don't like football. At 22, I probably still would.
I would say, even though you asked, the first question was, do I have many friends? It's something I've always struggled with. Because when I was younger and it was literally just me and my best friend Joe at school, the two metalheads, no one listened to metal in the entire school.
As we grow older, some of your friends that you had at that time at uni may have become more financially successful. Some people maybe struggled. There could be an ego and resentment there.
The easiest way to maintain a friendship is to have something that you both connect over. If you haven't got much in common at all, it's going to be so much harder.
So, Rob, do you have many friends?
What's your definition of many?
What's your definition of many? That's maybe a good start point.
It's a good point, right? It's a good point. So I have my friends who are also my bandmates, who I wouldn't just consider as bandmates, considering we haven't played together for a long time. They're the friends I'd take the bullet for, without a doubt. There are friends who were previously colleagues in some description, whether that's recently or whether that's way, way, way back, that maybe wouldn't take a bullet for, but maybe like a leg stab wound, I would say. And then there's just general acquaintances you meet on through mutual friends and things like that maybe I'd take a slap. But then some people I wouldn't take anything for. Yeah, this is going to be a really interesting one, because this is stuff we think about a lot, but there's going to be some things we've not really like verbalized yet, or even completely figured out in our heads.
Yeah, and that's why I thought this was really interesting, because I think that, like, I think the topic of, certainly when you get into if you're in your early mid-20s, we'll tell you why you're a lucky bastard here in a second, I think. But I think when you get into your 30s and older, a lot of the conversation you have about friends, and maybe loneliness in today's world, where most people see people from the neck up and like never from the neck down, they don't see people in person as much, that it's partly a part true problem of like, do you actually have less friends, and partly expectation management of how many friends are you supposed to have as you get older. You know, like, do you think you have less friends than you did when you were 25?
I don't know if I'd say less, but who they were has definitely changed.
Interesting. How so?
Again, more comes back to the band were two different guys. The colleague friends, it was an entirely different job. There were some previously from roles that I'd only had maybe a couple of years before that are still in your friend group that drift the further away you get from that employment level. So I think it's because the situation and the environment changed. But there's always been that core handful. But again, it changed. This is really opening up. So this is giving me some insight here. It's really flipping changing. The people I would call my best friends, which is a term I've always kind of had an issue with, but the people I would call my best friends from school, I haven't spoken to for a long time, apart from one who I randomly bumped into at a Tool concert in the O2, and the next thing I know, I'm at his wedding. It's fantastic. But we've had like 20 years of not seeing each other.
Yeah.
So you can't catch up on 20 years at a loud fucking concert and at the guy's wedding where everyone wants a piece of him. So the onus there obviously is to, you know, if you're thinking, oh, why don't you fucking meet up and chat? Obviously, that we're going to talk about this anyway. This is what we're going to talk about. Some of the issues, some of the barriers of maintaining friendships. And the other kids who I would have called best friends back then, again, since school, nothing. But then there's I'd say the ones I forged in my 20s are the ones that have stayed this far.
Yeah.
But it still changes.
Yeah, I think I always look at, you know, like when you look at Instagram and you see all the positive comments, you ignore them and you focus on the bad one. I think the same thing happens when you like compare friendship group size to other people. I always compare myself to the people who have kept loads of uni mates, kept loads of schoolmates, right? Like, I think girls are better than this at guys, because maybe I don't know. Maybe we can break this down of like guys reaching out or whether that's the issue. But like, Ellie won't see her friends often, but Ellie will go back and see uni mates for an event every now and again. There's 6 or 7 of them. They'll all make an effort to come out. She'll go and see some schoolmates, right? She'll go see some old jobs, and I'm like, I have one uni mate that I could get on the phone with and hang out, and that's my mate Alex. I have like 4 schoolmates from like back home. So I think men don't, for whatever reason, maybe it's just me, maybe people just don't like me, but like I think men as a whole aren't as good at keeping those friendships. Would you agree with that? And if so, why do you think that is?
As far as I'm aware, looking up, we'll get onto this, but the male loneliness epidemic that's currently happening and increasing, it is I don't fully understand why, but it says here men are less skilled at women than making friends. Now, there'll be gender-specific personality traits, empathy, things like that will be higher in agreeableness, things that are higher in females than they are in males. But and again, that's just a very broad statement. Obviously, you go deeper into demographics and psychographics, things change a little bit. But why are we less skilled? Is it because? No, fuck it. I'm just gonna say it. I don't care if this is the one that gets us cancelled. It's not gonna get us cancelled. But is it because like once men get into that workforce, the focus is then on rising up through the corporate ladder, building your self-employed business, becoming the man in whatever way, shape, or form that means. Whether that's Tate's ideal or Peterson's ideal, or you want to be like Goggins, or you want to be Elon Musk and rule the world.
Well, this I don't think it's a particularly controversial point, right? Maybe my next one might be, but like in the sense of we've talked about this before, like the gender pay gap, right? And when we actually break down that doesn't often really exist, and it's that men tend to work more hours down to maternity leave and things like this. It might not, like, it might be like if just people being busy, they're working later, they're in work, they might make friends with a couple of colleagues, but it's their working environment. The wife, more often, not always, with the kids, so they might meet the parents of schools and things like that more, as the guy will, because he's at work, so he has less opportunities to see. And if he's and again, the longer somebody works, the more of their free time they might want to spend with their partner.
Yeah,
because marriage does change things, right? Like you see it, like my mum and dad are, like, they have a few friends, but they're mainly, it's just them two, right? Yeah. Because if I'm working all the time, the first thing I want to do is spend time with my wife when I've got that time off, which means to make friends, either you've got to part with some of that for a time being, or you've got to find couples that you both like. And then that becomes a little bit trickier. There's another sounding board you need to kind of get through to kind of get a friend through. And it'd be interesting to see the badass boss bitches, the women CEOs, and where their friendship groups compare to male CEOs. I think that would be a really interesting statistic.
That would be interesting to look at. And it'd be interesting to look at does that later down the line when we see the effects of these things in the long term, because let's face it, your female CEO, bad boss bitch, is a more recent phenomenon than it was in the early 2000s and the 90s, etc. Will that change the statistics of who can keep friends or not? It'd be interesting to say. I'm not saying either way it will or won't, but it'd be interesting to watch that without a doubt. But there's also, like, you brought it back perfectly. It's then the kids are born, and it's more likely statistically that it will be the stay-at-home mum, whether they work or not, whilst the fella's out working. What are women going to do? They're going to meet the school mums. They're going to meet their friends who have also got kids, probably of a similar age if you're still mates with your uni and your schoolmates. And you're going to share stories. You're going to share experiences. You're going to ask for help as well. Whereas if I think you're the dad staying at home, you're much less likely to ask for help, to arrange meetups, things like that, because you've still got that innate, I've got this handled. Yeah. I don't need anyone else. They don't need play dates. They've got me. Yeah.
But I think that's a bigger problem as well, right? Even outside of kids, of this I got this handled sort of things, because like dynamic of guy chat. as a whole, and I don't want to get into things like guys should just talk more about their feelings, because I don't necessarily think that's. I think that's an entry level thing of helping blokes with their mental health.
Yeah,
It's certainly not the start.
Mm.
But whereas again, I don't want to generalize, but I think that with the maybe extra levels of empathy of girls chat, there is, if something goes wrong, if there's big life moments in their life, girls don't tend to get fed up of helping other girls out, right? Whereas everybody will tell a bloke, "Hey, we got you. You know, if you need to talk, we can talk," and that's great, and that's a big step in the right direction from maybe 20, 30 years ago. But it's rarely that's always true. Right? Like, I've had this where I've talked to guys after big, like, life moments in my life, and then you just start to see them pulling away from you because you've now become the burden in the group, because they don't want that negativity. They just want to get on with their life.
Of course.
So I don't know, there's a dynamic there that, like, why we don't keep long friends, because as you get older, like, more life events happen. You lean on those friends you've got around you, and let's say out of 5 new friends you make, 1 or 2 of them would be the person that'll stick out. So it's like a filtering system. Like my best mate, Nick, right? I've known him since year 1 at school, right? The amount of things we've had, me moving to the other side of the world, we've had like all these things that could have tested our friendship, hasn't. But for every one person like Nick, there's probably been about 5 people, a few people that just, I lost contact when I moved to Hong Kong, a few people I lost contact with in there. And I think this is where the expectation management thing comes in with it, because I know, you didn't go to university, did you? No, so like,
not allowed.
I know from university, you're. This is where proximity, I think, gets harder as you get older, because you're in a place at uni where you're just put in this melting pot. Like, especially for me, I was at Aberystwyth University, and it's just this really small town with 2 nightclubs, and you just met people on nights out, and there was like, it was so easy to make friends that I made close friends very quickly because I had to live with some people. I could go, "Hey, do you want a beer? I'll be there in 5 minutes," and so you get this great array of friends. And then as you get older, like for me to go and see my best mate, Nick, I need to go all the way to Wolverhampton. You know, if I want to see mates up north, you know, my mate Jack in, you know, up in Newcastle, I'd have to go all the way. That's a number of hours, like, drive. So the as you get older, we compare ourselves. Like, look, I had loads of friends when I was 24. Yes, but you're also in a place where it was easy. Like, I just spent 4 years in Hong Kong, and people have loads more friends in Hong Kong than they do in the UK. And it's because Hong Kong is like university. Everything is so close. I could go out with someone for a drink in 10 minutes, you know, tops. But yeah, actually, like, I think there's a bunch of stuff that changes. Everyone has that expectation. Should I have as many friends as I did when I was 20? What's happened? And I think there's a proximity issue there, but also what you like. I think when you're early 20s, you haven't had enough life experience to kind of have any strong opinions on things and strong thoughts and strong likes and strong dislikes. So like if I said, "Do you want to go to watch football?" I don't like football. At 22, I probably still would. Whereas now, like for me to make a friend, they have to have a similar interest to something I like in some way, shape or form.
Definitely. The shared experience. Whereas when you're younger, the key word you said there was proximity. You're in this environment, and this is where your colleagues can end up becoming your friends, and through whatever social interactions you have with people, proximity creates the connection rather than the friendship. Because there are like, say, colleagues that you'd class as a connection that you probably have in this, like, nights out, for things like that you wouldn't necessarily call a friend. But that's not to knock it in any way, shape or form. But again, like, that shared experience of something in common is more important when you're older. The guys I know that are still having those that are still closer friends, not necessarily meeting up on as a regular basis as you were in your 20s at the age of 22, but it's more based around shared experiences. 9 times out of 10, that shared experience is everyone's kids all together, big barbecue in the garden or something like that. But sometimes it is like with my friends, they had, I think they always had it. I think they had it since school. I'm a tiny bit older. I'm a couple of years older than them, so I didn't really know them in school. They do Dungeons and Dragons like once a month, once every couple of months. Sometimes it's all of them. Sometimes it's a small handful. But that's their shared experience, just playing a game. Sometimes it's different it's different games night.
I don't understand that game at all, by the way. I've watched people play it, and it seems like some guy at the front is just reading a random script, and then people are acting off it. I don't understand how it works.
I've played. They roped me in, and I've played 4, maybe 5, no more than 5, 4 or 5 times. I still don't know what I'm doing. Comes to me and they're like, "What do you want to do, Rob?" I'm like, "I just still don't know." And they go, "Well, you can do anything." That's the problem. You've given me too much choice. Give me 2 choices: fight, run. I'll choose from there. Like whatever you want me to do. But it is also that little bit, and it goes into. I'm not knocking it at all because they've been ridiculously funny nights. It's hilarious because it's not just the game; it's chatting about life, it's other jokes, things like that. But it could all. But I have friends that the thing will be a rugby game. Now I've been to maybe 3, 4 rugby games in my life, and
one of those with us,
and one of the ones with you guys.
Yeah.
My initial thought when someone suggests a rugby game is. Not really gonna know what's going on. Like I enjoy it, great atmosphere, great experience, but sometimes I'm like, well, I've got to stand out in the cold and look. Not even like I've got to crane my neck to look at you guys to talk. So it's like for me, that's not it. Sometimes it's a gig, but again, like you got 3 hours of the night where bands are playing and you can't really talk to each other. And you realise, how the hell did we ever communicate in clubs in our 20s? Because this is ridiculous. No wonder all our voices are fucked. So shared experience is obviously an important way to maintain some of those friendships. But I think this is where some of those friendships can dissipate because maybe you don't enjoy that stuff as much anymore as you previously did. Exactly. Or again,
people
like
change,
maybe
right? They get into families and other things. And like, how many people, if they look back at their friendship, how they met most of their friends, started with clubbing, nights out, maybe drugs, alcohol. And as you get older and you don't want drugs and alcohol and loud nights out anymore, it's like, have you still got that thing that connected you in the first place? Because at the underlayering of that, like even, again, I'll use Nick as an example. He's my best friend, right? And I think he will be for the rest of my life. But if we met at school, that's maybe slightly different. But there's lots of mates I met at university that now, like, I go, okay, we started off as a drinking buddies, and then under that, like, do we like any of the same stuff? Like, really? We get on, we have a vibe, but when someone talks about books and literature, I'm just like, what? And then I'm talking about wrestling and rugby and fitness, and they're like, well. So it's like, like it becomes tricky. Unless you have loads of stuff going on in your life that you can always have like a story to tell, ends up getting very much like so people just start to distance. Physically, metaphorically and physically in terms of life and moving further away.
Yeah. It's just funny. It's funny you say that. I would just get out in the open. I would say, even though you asked, the first question was, do I have many friends? It's something I've always struggled with. Yeah. Because when I was younger and it was literally just me and my best friend Joe at school, the 2 metalheads, no one listened to metal in the entire school. Oof. No one was listening to it until rap metal became a thing and it became a bit cooler for the mainstream to listen to. We were listening to things that people would. We were the weird kid. We were 100% the weird kid. But I could also connect in the other groups because I was sporty. I was connecting with some of the sporty guys. Because I wasn't the dumbest guy, I was connecting with some of the nerds as well. Although I was really punching with my knowledge skills there as well, without a doubt. But I always liked the idea, and this is something that people who grew up in that metal crowd will empathise with, is that you kind of then get used to being the odd one out. So you embrace it and you internalize it, and it's cool that you're into dark, weird shit and crazy, growly vocals and stuff like that. And so I just ended up embodying that persona of, this is what I like, this is me. It feels like I'm having my own favourite band here that no one else knows, and it's cool stuff like that. And then you get interested in what that band does, and you create an identity around it. And I think there's still things in me there where I've never really connected with what happens in the mainstream anyway. I was a Chelsea fan for many years, but I wasn't the most hardcore football fan. I could tell you the Chelsea from early 90s to maybe 2012, I could tell you everything about Chelsea. As soon as I didn't watch football for 2 years, I've forgotten it all. I couldn't tell you anything about the modern game at all. But outside of Chelsea, I couldn't tell you shit. I couldn't tell you anything about another team's lineup or their history or anything like that at all. Like, so there's little things where I can connect with other people through that little similarity, but I've never been as mainstream as with my interests, with my thoughts, with my personality, with my opinions, and my identity as such, which makes it harder because most people are in what you would call that classic mainstream type thing.
That brings a really interesting point, right? And we'll get onto like technology because if I just ask that question, we get into like social media and Zoom calling people work from home, which I think is really important and worth talking about. But something I don't think anyone talks about with this, in terms of making it harder to make friends, is the ability to make small talk. Right, you're not going to go into you meet your mate for the first, like someone at the first time at a bar or at a club or whatever else, and then start talking about like deep politics or like whatever you're into. But I had this thought the other day that I think I was in the car with Ellie and I was like, do you know what? I think Taylor Swift is amazing. She's a megastar, but I never hear any news about her. And he's like, what? I hear news about her all the time. And do you think there's an element of like it's harder to make friends because we now have these echo chambers of like 15 years ago, I would have, even if I didn't care, I would have known a little bit about pop culture in general. I would know who's in season. I know number one. I would have known a little bit about the current celebrities on television. Whereas now, because I can just funnel down a YouTube channel, I don't know what music's out. I don't know what's on telly. I don't know who's a celebrity right now. Are Ant Dexter around? I don't know. You know, like So there's these things now where people like it's so much harder to make small talk because all you've immersed yourself in is your interests.
Yeah,
to the point where you can't connect with a wider audience, which brings, like, if you look at it like a sales funnel, it's like less leads coming into the funnel. You might be really good at getting people halfway through the funnel out because you have a deeper understanding on certain topics, but not as many people come in because you can't do that small talk. Do you think that makes an impact?
Massively so. Massively so. And that's why I think the better, without going down this route, but the better biz coaches out there that work with funnels and help you teach them, you shouldn't just try and target everyone. We covered this last week anyway, but
with friends, you should. It's like it's like an anti-sales funnel with friends, isn't it? It's like I need to broaden my ability to talk to as many people as possible, and I don't have those skills. We've niched down our lives into like in my day-to-day, I will watch things about fitness. I will maybe watch like shows I like on Netflix, not necessarily what everyone else will like on Netflix. I will watch wrestling stuff, right? I never have to turn on the telly now and go, what's on? So that means there's when that happens, there's other people that also are what's on. Like one of the again, I'll bring up Nick. One of the things we bonded over when we was a kid was the OC. Right? We didn't choose the OC because we just like teen dramas. I turned on the television. We had 5 channels at the time. It was on. And I went, I'll watch this. And he'd also done the same thing. And we bonded over that. The other was a show called The Mole, which recently came back on Netflix. Really good. Watch it. But they did a British version, which was annoyingly better about 15, 20 years ago. But similar thing. Now, if in that really formative years of our friendship where we were just getting really connected, if those shows didn't happen, if he was just watching things about food, I don't know what Nick likes. Yeah. He likes drinking and eating, so he watched things about that. And I watched things about wrestling. We may have never had that initial connection in the same way. Yeah. And I think now people don't, because everyone has a very, very niche watching habits rather than a more generalized, here's celebrity culture.
Yeah, it can be. I think it goes both ways as well. Some people, whether they never had that niche identity growing up or whether they kind of abandon it for the identity of being a couple, a married couple with a kid, and you watch what everyone else is watching, listen to what everyone else is watching, and kind of lose that sense of self, basically. What made you unique before, which is gone. We're in an era now where we have the ability to communicate with more people than ever, but you also have the ability to create the biggest echo chamber that stops you being able to connect with more people than ever, without doubt. And sometimes it's not through your choice. Sometimes it's through whatever the media decides you're gonna see or read or learn about.
This is the interesting thing, right? Like we're in a situation when we have more access to people than ever before. Like 10 years ago, when we wouldn't have been able to have a conversation right now doing this. So, yet people are more lonely. Why is that? Like, I'll give an idea. Go on.
I'd say, in the simplest way I can put it, is we've got more to worry about now. Got a lot more to worry about, for politically, socially, criminally,
Financially,
health-wise, financially. We've got so much more going on that takes our attention. How much more energy can you put to? I've got to maintain friendships as well.
Yeah.
It's you've got to. Everyone has to put themselves first. You have to be the best version of yourself. You have to be putting yourself first before you then try and impact other people and keep your connections and whatever. And when you've got 50 million other things to worry about, how can you even focus on being your best version of yourself, which I don't think most people are, certainly not from a financial and health related perspective. So I think we've just got way much more to worry about now than we had before.
And I think things like that is interesting, because things like this accumulate so much, like, and I'm not going to get into my private stuff whilst we're hitting record, but as you know, and some people might know it, listen to this, if they can work out when this came out, I've not had the best week, and I had a life incident that's rocked me. Now, what I've realized with this week is, and this is probably a benefit from it, is that I got so caught up in my business. There's always more things to do being self-employed, right? So I could do my outreach, and I could do my content, and I can do the calls that I need to do. And then I go, right, I need to study. I need to create this document. I need to create that document. I need to do this. I need to do that. I need to network with this person. And while all these things technically can be done, I think there's a law of diminishing returns when it comes to output in your business. Like 2 hours of work, 4 hours of work is probably better. 5 hours of work might be a little bit better, but not quite so much. And then it sort of dissipates off to being worse. And you just end up like just doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff. And then you don't look after your life and get your life in order. Now, what this week has taught me is like, my business is fine. Right? Look, I'm not doing as much outreach this week as I probably should be. I'm not maybe getting as many leads in, but from a client care perspective, I'm doing way less of that, and the standard has not dropped at all. So you realize how much of the stuff you're probably doing in your day is so superfluous, and all those little things like extra scroll on Instagram, or just doing stuff for the sake of doing stuff, or trying to being busy, they drain you at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And like the thought of going out and seeing a friend, like, at the end of that day, it's like, nah.
Yeah.
And I think that's, I also don't like as well, it's like, and I think it comes back to that small talk thing in terms of social stuff. You have to be, the people who use social media as social environments are the people who have grown up being able to know how to be social. So for the sake of argument, right, I've now made a lot of friends through this podcast. That has always started for me understanding how to go and drop a DM to somebody, or reach out to somebody, or contact somebody first, in order to get that initial conversation, and then have the ability to go from small talk to deep conversation to where people are now. But if you've never been taught this, right? Like, there's a great example of this. I have a friend in Hong Kong. I'm not going to say his name because I want to feel like I'm smashing his ego and calling him out. He might know him and talking about him, but he is an absolute Casanova. Absolute Casanova. Like, genetically great looking guy, always in shape, even if he doesn't train for a month. Like, those guys, right? The Luke McGurks of the world, but it's not Luke. And
shout out Luke.
Yeah, shout out Luke, just for being
sexy,
annoyingly perfect. But he's always, and he's now in a committed relationship. He's always had a woman, right? Never ever struggled. But in 4 years of going out with him on nights out, I have never, ever seen him chat to a woman in a nightclub. Ever. Now, maybe he can. Maybe he does it when I'm not around, and I've just been in the bad nights. But that says to me, people are getting really good at Tinder and Bumble and swiping, and they are lost in the real world. So then when you're looking at friends, we don't, like, it's so mainstream to talk about dating apps. Now, I assume friendship apps exist in the same way. But could you tell me what they are? So now we've got a world that's become more digital, and that the world is accommodated for with romantic relationships, but we have not necessarily accommodated it mainstream for social relationships. So we've now got people that don't know how to have these conversations, and now kind of like, well, I don't know what to do. Where do I find friends? What do I do? Whereas, we don't have that gamification of it like you do with dating.
It's funny you say that. My friend We're talking about this yesterday. Well, a WhatsApp group that has some friends and some acquaintances, which I think is an important thing to maintain as well. Which we'll get onto strategies later.
Yeah.
We started off talking about population collapse. This is how it all came about. We were talking about population collapse because, people aren't, the numbers of people that haven't had a sexual partner in the last 10 years is tripling, or something along those lines. Similar stuff to what we spoke about before. And one of the guys referenced someone at his work, youngish guy, like mid-20s, again, great physique, immaculate chat, good at what he does, got his shit together on the dating apps and having a horrific time of it. But the problem is, with the dating apps, there's always someone the other fucking side. And were we ever really meant to build connection through pixels on a screen first and us trying to put a image of what we want the other person to see rather than our true self? Probably not. Whereas
do you think, I know it's so to cut off there, but I think it's a relevant point. Do you think online friendships can be as close as in-person friendships?
I think it can. I definitely think it can. I don't think it's ever going to be the majority, though. I don't think that's going to be the case for the majority of people.
I think you've got to. There's got to be a reason. You got to make. You got to.
Yeah.
It's got to be, like we have a podcast every week. I consider you one of my best mates. But I've met you. We obviously have met in person, but we've met online way more than in person. I knew of you when we were colleagues because we didn't work in the same gym rather than actually knowing you. So I think they social media. Everyone blames social media for the lack of friendships. I think it's how people use social media.
Yeah, without a doubt. And what are you using social media for? Most people are using social media to look at other people's lives, which and negatively affect their emotional state. We're not using social media to maintain our current connections, recreate old ones, or even create brand new ones. That's not the majority of people. And if anyone says that's not the case for me, all you've got to do is look at people's following and follower list. And there's always going to be two vast differences there. Business perspective, entirely different, of course. But people would much rather have more people following them than what they're following, or that being equal. And for what fucking reason? Because we're all using social media for the wrong reason. What were the first social media sites, really?
MySpace.
Okay. MySpace.
Loves MySpace.
Friendster. Things like that, okay? There was, I can't remember what it was called. It wasn't Friendster.
MySpace is an interesting one as well, right? Because MySpace allowed you to have a bit of personality. So there was still a bit of individuality with MySpace, that people who came onto your page made choice to, this is my kind of person or not, based off the music, the background picture you put on, and how you curated that site. Whereas then when Facebook came along, it made us all necessary. We're all really a number. If you go to an Instagram page, of course, if you hunt through someone's page, you can find out how people are a bit different.
Yeah.
But an Instagram page and another Instagram page look relatively the same. A Facebook page and a Facebook page is relatively the same. So very quickly, we've got this thing where everyone's very uniform.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if that has anything to do with anything. This is me spitballing.
Strange, right? It's almost like being back at school, isn't it? It's strange when you really think about it. The opportunity for you to be the individual that you are online, and this platform automatically almost conforms you to everyone looking the same. The MySpace thing was an interesting one. There was, just before MySpace came out, it wasn't Friendster. I can't remember the name of it, saved my life, but it was like, it wasn't called Find a Friend, but essentially that's what it was. You would type in, you would create your profile, a picture, a little bio about yourself, and then you could find your people using it to find their old schoolmates, long distance friends, family. It was the most basic thing ever. We're talking early 2000s. Very, very basic. And I think you had the opportunity to message, but not instantly message. It was almost like an email through their internal server.
Yeah.
But beyond that, there was no other connection. We're talking to a point where you can either arrange to meet up, and if the distance has increased, it's not going to happen, or you can keep messaging through the platform there, which you're probably not going to do, because again, everyone's got their own shit to worry about. There wasn't really the opportunity to exchange mobile numbers. Most people were never happy giving their home number out unless it was immediate friends and family. You're not going to give that out to old acquaintances, whatever. So that platform didn't really do anything, and then the next level of platform comes up, and then mobiles come out, and suddenly, now you don't need to exchange numbers. You've added a friend on Instagram, and it's instant messaging, and you can call people through Instagram, and it's become a yellow pages in itself, shall we say.
Yeah.
Some of you kids won't understand what the yellow pages is, but it was gangster. It was cool. Or the BT phone book. The BT phone book.
The only time I've heard the yellow page is called Gangster. I love it.
Gangster, man. It's gangster. I used to love sitting reading through that going, that's what I'm going to be one day. I'm going to be this. Look at that geezer's ad. That's fucking epic. But I didn't do anything with that knowledge. I just went, doesn't matter. I'm going to be a rock star at 21. Didn't become a rock star. But it's the opportunity. The opportunity to connect has always been there. Of course it has. But now it's obviously a lot bigger than ever. And it's a lot easier than ever to find those old school friends if you can remember names and if they've got the social media profiles. But there's also the opportunity to just look into strangers' lives, which everyone has that little 1% voyeurism inside them. Every single person. Some people is 90%. Some people is 50%, but everyone has 1%.
But that's a distraction for maybe either spending time with the people around you in real life to cultivate those relationships, or going, you like go back to that find a friend thing. You had one purpose, so you weren't distracted looking at strangers' lives. You were there to find school friend, or you were there to find people in your area that liked rugby. And do you think there's also an element here of why people lose friends in their 30s is especially for guys, is financial change and status changes? Because as you go through your 20s, everyone is also on a level footing, right? So I'll use uni example, where everyone's making the same amount of money, right? They have that, as you said, that blank space with experiences, so everyone's willing to do stuff. Whereas as we grow older, some of your friends that you had at that time at uni may have become more financially successful. Some people maybe struggled. There could be an ego and resentment there, or at the very least, like if I'm a rich snob who's sold his business for £3 million, and I like cheese and wine nights at the Savoy, and you just tend to get in a 6-pack of Stella and have watch a film in the house. Your lives start to divide because you can't do what they now want to do because that experience has changes, and they might not want to do what you can do because it's so that over time as you get into your 30s, people's lives naturally grow further apart, and that's sometimes necessary, and sometimes something that people actually need to properly work on.
Without a doubt, it keeps coming back to that shared experience as well, or the mutual experience. What are you both mutually interested in? That's the easiest way to maintain a friendship, is to have something that you both connect over. If you haven't got much in common at all, it's going to be so much harder. Most of the connections I've lost over time, hardcore football fans, hardcore drinkers, other sports. They can tell you everything about football. They can also tell you everything about the rugby and the cricket and the Formula One and the boxing. I could maybe maintain knowledge of one sport in my head at any given time. As soon as I got well into the Olympic weightlifting, I started losing track of what was happening in athletics. And athletics was my thing before. And vice versa. You flip between those things. So what can you... I'll use this as an example. The first cigar bar I ever went to, I went with a friend. We had an amazing cigar. We had an amazing old-fashioned. And they were playing jazz. They were playing jazz music on the hotel. It was like part of the hotel thing, on the speakers. And we had an amazing, proper hipster. This is right. We had an amazing cigar, an amazing whiskey, but we spoke about jazz for about 3 hours. Fucking incredible. Absolutely loved it. Second friend I ever went to a cigar bar with, we had an amazing cigar, amazing whiskey, and we just spoke the most random shit all fucking night. Nothing to do with jazz, nothing to do with anything. The type of conversation other people would listen in and go, what the fuck are they talking about? And we're just pissing ourselves laughing. That's the mutual shared experience, not the fact that we're both in a cigar bar.
Yeah.
So I could have me and my best friend, so to speak, could one day decide to go watch a football match. I don't think we ever will, because we've not got mutual interest in football to begin with. But if we went to a football match just to be in the same place at the same time, what are we going to do? We're going to talk shit for fucking 3 hours straight and not have a clue what's going on the pitch. So it's not only just a shared experience of a physical space. It's it's how what's the mutual, what are the similarities in your identity as well? Because I could be wrong. I don't believe I'm wrong. I think it's the same. I think Jordan Peterson had this with on a podcast with his daughter not so long ago, where they were talking about relationships, not just in terms of marital relationships, but friendships as well. Is, do people stay together by being more different or by being more similar?
Ooh, interesting.
And as far as I can remember, it is more similarities, but you can't be the same person. If you become the same person, identity's lost. You become the couple identity, and that doesn't exist. You can't have a two-person identity. Well, in this day and age, you can, but you can't have complete loss of your identity. Whereas if there's similarity, if you're more similar, cool, you've got crap tons in common. You've got enough of your own individual personality.
Do you think that depends on the decade, though, as well, right? Like, so, like, in your 20s, you're developing your own identity. Then in your 30s, you are two people. And this, again, I don't know, but you are two people that have separate paths that come together. In your 40s, you may be slightly close together because, again, you had more time, maybe more life changes, maybe you had kids. So let's say 20s, you have all the friends, you're in the same place, proximity, same town, same city. Then you meet your partner, you're two different people on identity, enjoying navigating the 20s. You get to your 30s, you come slightly close together. Maybe you get married, right?
Yeah.
And in that time, then you maybe move away from certain friends. You maybe move to other countries. You maybe bought a house, right? So you can't afford to do anything with people for a while, lose contact with people. And then in your 30s, you've still got those two separate identities. And then in your 40s, maybe you start to have kids and you become even close together. So, like, we're saying that we can't have the shared identity couple, but I bet if most people look at this and look at their parents, I would argue, say they probably have a shared identity couple. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't think my mum and my dad have the same personality, but my mum and dad's lives are very much intertwined now in their 60s. You know, and I don't look at that and go, I think that's a good thing. I don't think that's a problem. But maybe that would have been in their 30s if they've almost given up on the next 30 years to just be with each other.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I can't say too much about what's the perfect way to keep a marriage going when my one doesn't exist anymore. But if I think back, there were vast differences between two of us. Big differences between two of us, especially when we first met as well. Like she loved a club, she loved Faces in Ilford. If you've ever been there.
I haven't, but you know, I'll go and have a hunt for it literally after this. Shall I? I'll go have a walk and find it.
You couldn't pay me to go in Faces, basically. You couldn't pay me. In my 20s, probably would have gotten it, but I didn't. Like some big differences, but enough in common for there to be at least icebreakers, conversation when we first met. Because otherwise, if everything's too different, and when I was dating, this was the big thing of whether I chose to go on a second date or not. If there's absolutely zero in common, I don't see the need to keep connection with that person. Unless they're super, super nice, whatever. I don't see the need to keep connection with someone you've got zero in common with. Because what are you doing there? You're just kind of hanging on for a connection that's not going to blossom into anything and just ends up being a number in your WhatsApp that you're not gonna do anything with. It's the ones where they got a second. There was at least. I'm trying to take like attractive connection completely out of the mix here as well. But I wouldn't have gone on the date anyway if it wasn't. But in terms of like a second, I know people get lonely on a second date. Then I think it's more about. I think the first date's like, let's find what we've got in common. Second date is now tell me who you really are. Tell me who you are, the individual. And let's see how much further we can take this. And I think that happens over a longer period of time with friends that are more related to work, similar hobbies, things like that. That takes longer. You're not going to know who the complete individual is on day one of your work.
I think,
you're not going to release that either,
right? And that's why I think we now maybe have, because we're in these echo chambers, more people have the ability to have deep conversation on a very small selection of topics, but very few people have that small talk. So I reckon a lot of friendships now aren't getting past the first date, if the first date's even happening, because they don't know how to create that, because all they go into is, I really like, I don't know, politics, so I'm going to go into a deep YouTube video on this. They've never understood small talk. They've never had to do it, you know. And there's So I think before we go on to the tips, I think to close off this bit, if anyone's listening to this and thinking, yeah, like, look, I'm in my 30s now, I was a bit worried about not having friends. I think a little bit like when we did, is the genetics to blame for your weight loss? I think there's a little bit of empathy and like, look, I think it's normal. And I think most people in their 30s and 40s do start to look back in their early 20s and go, what happened? Why did I have like 10, 15 friends and now I barely have one? Like, I think that's normal. It doesn't make you broken, doesn't make you a bad person, doesn't make you uninteresting. It's just life. And I've known people that I've lost contact with for years that come back and they become really best friends in your life again. It can. But I think going into the next stage, it's like, well, if you're feeling there's a deficit in friendships, it's down to you and no one else to put the steps in place to find new people in your life, which is more tricky as an adult. You have less time, you have less money. Now, I'd like to join more. There's things I'd want to do. And I'm sitting there going, well, I also might have this priority of building a business. I'm putting some extra income there. When I go, if I want to join a gym for bodybuilding and a CrossFit gym and maybe another club, all of a sudden these things pile up. So I appreciate that it's difficult. But like if we go through, what are some of the tips that you have for building friendships as you get older?
I thought this was cool. So Robin Dunbar, evolutionary psychologist, he's been on podcasts all over the place. Most people would have heard something by him. He estimates that you'll probably you'll have 150 meaningful connections across your life. But most of those will be difficult to maintain. So it just shows how often your environment changes and who your meaningful connections are across your entire span of your life. 150, right? Which sounds like a lot. That's like 150 friends. That's cool. And it might be nice to think that you'd have 150 people turn up to your 50th, 60th birthday party or even your funeral. But chances are that's not going to happen, right? So how do we maintain this? And I found something by a guy called Tim Urban, which I thought was really, really cool. So it comes back to, if you want to, it's all about making. If you're sitting there thinking, I wish I had more money, I wish I had more time, I wish I had more friends, all those things you have to make. You have to make more money. No one's going to give it to you. You have to make more time. You're not going to get extra hours in the day. If you want friends, you have to make friends. You have to be a bit more active. And guys, especially, we don't reach out to each other. So if you're sitting there thinking, I haven't spoken to my friend for a while, and they're not reaching out, you probably haven't reached out either. So stop being a pussy and be the first one to reach out as well, you know? But if you want to prioritize, you have to prioritize. That's the thing. You have to prioritize who you're going to give a fuck about, okay? So I found something by a guy called Tim Urban where he says, it's a little bit nerdy, but you are going to split your friends into tiers. Tier 1, Tier 2, and Tier 3. Tier 1's friends, your siblings, which he's put in inverted commas, which doesn't mean it doesn't just mean family. It means the closest people to you. The ones you'll just share life's ups and downs with. Anyone listening to this now could probably think of 2 or 3 people who that is. The ones you're sharing life's ups and downs with. Tier 2 friends, your pretty good friends. You'll attend their wedding, but won't have any duties, is the example that he's given. Tier 1 friends, probably best to have a WhatsApp or Telegram group, and he says schedule weekly calls, but maybe like weekly chats, whether that's meetup, whether that's even a meetup. Tier 2, aim for once a month, and Tier 3, once a quarter. Your Tier 3 friends are your not really friends. They're the people you might meet up once with every few years. So if you were to use your Tier 1, your siblings, your Tier 2, your pretty good friends, your Tier 3, your not really friends, sit and think about who those people are, then you know who to contact. Like maybe once a quarter, you're going through your Tier 3 friends list. Hey guy, how you doing? Haven't seen you for a few months. Haven't seen you for a year. What's new? Want to meet up? It's not that hard to send that message, really. And I'm talking to myself here as well, because I don't do it as much as other people.
Me neither.
Tier 2, pretty good ones. These are ones you've shared some experiences with. You've been to weddings, things like that. You're likely to have a lot in common. You're likely to have shared experiences, and chances are you can. I think they're the people you reminisce with more when you meet up than anything else. And then your Tier 1s, they're the ones you can just talk about the most random shit. You can tell them the dark stuff, the good stuff, and you can make stuff up as well, and it doesn't matter. So I thought that was quite interesting. And as soon as I looked at it like that, I'm like, oh, I know who each of those are. So now I know who they are.
And you might be able to see which level is lacking.
Yeah.
And now, if Tier 1 is lacking, right? If you're like an only child like me and you realize, oh, I don't have too many close friends, that's harder to solve.
Of course.
But then that means that you maybe have to go a little bit more on the offensive of starting meeting people with closer connections to you. And I'll come on to that in a second. But then if you know there's less tier 3 friends, one, it's like, okay, does it matter that much? Like, I'd rather have 5 great friends than 50 acquaintances. But I'll start my ones with one that I think goes into this in terms of like maintaining friendships or a great tool to reconnect with old friendships. And that is the use of traditions. Now, I think as like girls will meet up and just go for like, we'll go for margaritas, right? And like, there doesn't need to be a thing per se. Obviously, there's birthdays, things like this. Whereas guys don't. Guys like there's got to be a reason. And when I see the things that I've done really well, there is a slightly fun, gamified lad tradition. And I'll give you 2 examples that work really, really well. One was my dad's friends. And they normally don't do this anymore. This did drift, but it was great for such a period of time where all my dad's school friends, every year, they went to a different one of the houses for bonfire night. So like they provided the food, invited everyone around, and then everyone else bought a firework, and we let them off in the garden. So so it was a great tradition. Every year, you know, you were going to meet up with your school friends to do X, Y, and Z, and have that catch up. Another great one in Hong Kong, there's something we had called the Kowloon experience, where every other Wednesday we went to a different restaurant on Kowloon side and ate very local food, right? And that we did that was supposed to be for our 6-week span until one of our friends left Hong Kong. And we loved it. It's still going today. And it's one of the things I miss most in Hong Kong. And I think like if you're someone now that's like wants to like you're starting to feel you like losing connection with friends, you don't see people as often, think, what is something we could all enjoy that I can maybe float this idea to my friends group now. Look, hey, how about once every 6 months we'll all go to the last game of the season together, or like every year. Then it gives things like people will block it out the diary, because as you get older, this is the thing. Like again, I'll throw Nick as an example. I'll go, hey, Nick, I'm back in Womben. Are you free? I'm not free for the next 7 weekends. Because life gets in the way, kids stuff, family stuff. So if you can have something that's such rooted into the yearly calendar that they block it out in advance, you know, at the very least, you've always got that. And I think that, and even for new friends, it's like if you have that group going, you can start to slowly invite people into it. Like that Kowloon experience, when people left Hong Kong and the group was getting smaller, they stopped being like, oh, I've got a mate that'd be really into this. And now they've just created these connections that I made new friends in Hong Kong because of that, and keep connection with my current friends better because of that. One of the lads moved to Costa Rica after a year. He's come back to Hong Kong. Now, it's obviously a multifactorial reason for that. But one of the first things he did, he messaged the Kowloon Experience WhatsApp group. I went sending my application for the 2024 season.
Nice.
You know, like that. I think that stuff works really, really well.
That's cool. That's exactly it. If I think about it, a lot of my tier 2 friends, and to an extent some tier 3 ones as well, are people that I met on the music scene. There were people you would see again and again. And a lot of the time, the most fun things for us to do were playing the regular yearly local festivals. So you might have gigs in the year, one band's not playing, they're doing other stuff because life gets in the way, or vice versa, or you're just playing different venues and you're not really playing the same ones as you did each other at the start. But when it came to the local festivals and the promoters knew what bands you wanted there because it's the good ones that are going to get the crowd going, we're all again, like then it becomes, that's the mutual thing. We know we're going to see those guys at this thing, and we all hang out together, and it's a fun flipping thing. We all watch each other and support each other. And then next thing you're doing, you're going to their gigs to support them, and you hang out before, you hang out afterwards. And then before you know it, you're like, yeah, I would consider them as friends. Some of them have been to weddings and vice versa, and other things. But again, it's maintaining it. Some of those connections definitely have slipped since the bands don't play as much, because and some of those festivals shut down and things like that. So then that's life. Life changes, environments change. What could you do to rebuild that? Is there another way, another yearly thing you could schedule in advance? Or if you see, I'm terrible for this, is seeing tier 2 and tier 3 friends open parties, sort of stuff like that, and I don't go because that's not where I thrive. It's not where I thrive. But I know if I went, I would know a lot of people there from tier 2, tier 3, and I'd have a great time and I'd connect. And I might have to get out of my comfort zone and flip between different friend groups all night, but there'd still be a lot of people there I know, and that's people I haven't seen for a long time.
Yeah, I think that's an important lesson, isn't it? You've got like every one of these things requires you to get out of your comfort zone. Like my next one was networking groups. And networking groups is interesting because it's not everyone thinks networking is a business thing, but it doesn't necessarily have to be. Now, I'm sure if you Googled networking groups in your area, that everyone has one. But I remember the one in London called Meetup. And I definitely think it must still exist. Definitely download Meetup if you want to make more friends. And it's sometimes a bit scary going to events on your own, but doing that a few times, you will find people that do the same things. And I went to business things, but like there used to be like run groups and like for me pro wrestling groups and all this sort of stuff. And I remember going to an event once. I can't remember the guy's name, but you would have known who he is. Bold Liverpool fella, does a podcast. The title of the talk was "What Facing 100 Years in Prison Taught Me About Happiness." He was one of the big. So it was great. It was this guy was a. He moved from Liverpool to be a stockbroker in America. And the pressure was on. He started doing cocaine to just keep him awake to do these things. Then he started hosting these parties where he was giving his friends and his colleagues drugs to keep him going. Then he started thinking, well, actually, I could probably start selling these drugs. And eventually made more money than he stopped brokering, stopped becoming stockbrokering, and became one of the biggest drug lords in small, like indescript. Is it Sean? I'm trying to remember his name. Indescript Liverpudlian guy you wouldn't even think. He's one of the biggest drug lords in American history. And they basically riot police came in, broke down his door while his parents were there and all sorts of things. And he faced 100 years in prison. Obviously didn't serve 100 years because he's out. But he wrote letters and smuggled them out about how bad the prison standards were. And that changed how all the prisons run in America now for better conditions for inmates because of that. And now he does talks about like just make people don't go down his path, works for children, does a podcast. But like that, well, I went on my own there. I didn't really make any friends. Like I was a bit nervous to chat to people. But let's say I went to 3 or 4 of those meetups and I didn't speak to anyone new because I was nervous. Maybe after a while I would say hello to the person next to me. Yeah. You know, like and I think doing those things, networking, I think the lesson here is networking isn't just for business. You'll find networking groups just for people who are like you. And in a world now where, as we said, as you get older, your interests become more defined and tunneled, you have to almost filter through and go, right, how do I find people that also like wrestling, in my example?
Yeah. These things exist. If you are listening to this and you're genuinely thinking, I'm in this bracket of, I don't think I've got any friends or I want more friends, and it is kind of on you to fix that, to make those friendships happen, those connections happen. You'd be surprised how many people are sitting thinking the exact same thing that probably would be a great match for you.
Yeah, and I will say, I know sorry to cut you off, but I would say here, I am that person.
Yeah.
Right now. So like, if you're thinking that I'm sad to be that way, I will tell you, I am in that place.
Yeah, and there's plenty of ways to meet. There's plenty. Like Meetup is just one of many websites. There are some that don't even have websites. You'll find them on Instagram, and they're big monthly meetups, things like that. I don't know if it still exists. Actually, I don't hear anyone talking about it anymore. That dating app Thursday, where you could only the app only worked on Thursday, so everyone's profiles are there on the Thursday for you to look through, swipe, whatever, and then you have your connection, you have your chat, and then by the end of Thursday, it's gone. And so any chats that you had, any connections that you had, like, go. Unless you're a smart guy and you get their fucking number, so you get them off the app, God's sake.
Is that the point?
That was the whole point. It was just on the Thursday. So a bit of, so you're not creating pen pals on Tinder.
Yeah.
But they did live meetups every Thursday as well. They had venues all over London booked out. I thought it was a terrible idea because what actually ended up happening was everyone in their friends group just ended up downloading Thursday, getting the tickets for these things. From what I heard from people who went to these events, you go there and it's just friend groups everywhere. So it's not, that fucking defeats the object. They should have done something better. Maybe if it has ended, maybe that's why it ended. But there's so many different ways. Again, look locally. Look in your nearest city. Think about what interests you've got. Find those Facebook groups, because I see a lot. I'm in a Facebook group with one of my favorite bands of all time called the Wild Hearts. They're one of those bands that were set to explode in the 90s on all the music channels, and then drugs and drink and disconnection just kind of ended the band. And they've always had their hardcore cult base, but they've never broken through again, which is such a shame because their songs are incredible. In their Facebook group are people that meet up on a regular basis, and they put, we're doing our Chelmsford's Yard Arms monthly meetup. Come down, like, it could be good to see this guy again, this guy again. And all they're probably doing is going, and they've got the mutual connection of the Wild Hearts, so they'll talk about the Wild Hearts.
Yeah.
And if I went to one of these evenings and wanted to make friends, I could go there, grab anyone, and go, "What's your favourite Wild Hearts song?" Boom, conversation that's going to last the entire fucking evening. But then it will naturally switch into other areas of your life. Tell me more about yourself. Where was the first time you saw the Wild Hearts? Oh, what was your job at the time? What were you doing at the time? These things will just naturally come out if you let them. But you've got to find those opportunities first, because they're not just going to fall in your lap, especially if you're a male.
Another one that is certainly UK-wide is Eventbrite. Like, on that, I went to watch the Royal Rumble with my favourite YouTube channel. Nice. They organised a meet up with loads of wrestling fans. It was great. You know, wrestling fans are weird, right? It's so strange that if you watch wrestling, these are these big, like, jacked, shredded alpha male, super confident, super swagger. You know, like, you want to be the pro wrestlers.
Yeah.
But the fans clearly don't.
No.
Like, the UK fans are they're absolute nerds. It's really strange. It's like this, is not like.
It's funny, isn't it?
But like that was on just an Eventbrite thing. And again, I bet if I went onto Eventbrite, I bet I could find other events that I could go to that wouldn't be so scary going on my own. The other one I had was just clubs. Do you like CrossFit? Do you like like, this is why I think a lot of the time Chris Williamson calls it menopause, right? Everyone's into bodybuilding in their 20s, and then they all switch to things like Brazilian jiu-jitsu and things like this in their 30s. And we've spoken about this before as a priority shift. Like, I don't really care as much what I'm looking like. Maybe I've got married. I don't need to be the biggest jackedest person. I need a new challenge. But I reckon there's another dynamic of why this shift happens to people's training habits, because bodybuilding is a very insular thing. And that maybe doesn't matter in your 20s because, as we said, you have probably the abundance of friends that you're ever going to have. So I can have a very solitude type way of doing my training. Yeah. But then as I get into my 30s and maybe I don't have that friendship groups, training now becomes a way to have that community. And this is why you see a lot of people 30s and above do CrossFit or High Rocks or BJJ, because it's a community that you don't just have from going to David Lloyd or going to your local bodybuilding gym with your headphones in on a leg press.
Yeah. And that's a big thing, especially for me. I've noticed very recently how often I'm putting my earphones in, or I'm just looking down at my phone straight away. My phone's come out of my pocket. So you isolate yourself a hell of a lot more. You really isolate yourself. And then you go into the gym. The gym's an odd environment anyway, but most people are doing the same thing there. Earphones in between sets, looking down at their phone. So like environments like that aren't necessarily always the best type of place, but in there you've got something in common with people. But again, it's just not the best environment for chat because we're all doing it. We're all isolating ourselves. And you're there not necessarily as a joint pursuit with someone else unless you've got a training partner. But CrossFit's the perfect example. CrossFit exploded. Nothing to do with the programming. Nothing to do with the exercises they were using. Nothing to do with the games. Exploded because it created a community unlike any other gym was building at the time. Unlike anything that the fitness industry had seen. Community of people training together, working together, building social events together. The competitive environment it created as well between peer groups. No wonder CrossFit became this massive community. And there are still people that I see now. I'm not involved with any CrossFit gym anymore, but I still see all the pages, and there's people that have been going there a long time with the same friends, or you see them on a night out and it's with the friends that they met from the CrossFit place. That's powerful. I'm not saying everyone has to go do CrossFit. I'm definitely not saying everyone has to go do CrossFit, but it can be whatever it is for you, whether that is Wild Hearts, whether that is music, whether that is, even if that is politics, even if that's your thing, that you want to connect with people over. You've got a way to connect. You've got something about you that will connect with other people. And you have got them. You've got more methods now than ever. It's so backwards that we're seeing loneliness epidemics when the opportunity to connect is bigger than ever. Crazy, right?
So to close off this show, what is one thing that you're like? Well, this is a call to action for everybody, but I'm going to start it with us. Right, this is your action point. Right, if you're listening to this, thank you. Subscribe, like, share, tell everybody. Like, use this as your friendship thing. Tell everybody in your Instagram. Say, I wanted to connect, and I'll start by sharing you a fantastic podcast. Do you want to be my friend? If you do that, you'll make some friends, and I'll be your friend. But maybe you don't want that. But so what is from this show? This is your action step. Go and do something now that we have said. Right? It could be find a networking group. It could be reach out to an old friend. So, Rob, what is the thing you're going to do when we stop on the record today to help your social circle?
The thing I'm going to do is go back through my WhatsApp of the last 2 weeks of people I haven't replied to, and people that I haven't seen for a while. The conversation has always been, we need to try and meet up, and we haven't done so. Start that conversation.
Yeah, I think mine would be somewhat similar, but I'm also going to find networking groups in Guildford. I'm going to see what's around. Like, I don't know many people in this area. I've been in this office, so I think this is my chance to do this. And then I also might start to think about UK tour. Who can I train with in the semi-local area? Just go to different gyms. But also, man, if people want to find you and become your friend, where are they finding you?
Friendster, MySpace, Bebo, Grinder. That's where you find me.
I probably still have a MySpace account that people can message me on.
I probably still have a Grinder. I thought it was great. Meetups with guys in a sauna. It was fucking awesome. Fat Loss Fastlane, Instagram, Facebook. Yeah, that's the best place. I can't be asked to set up on any other social platform. So that's good.
For me, if you want to follow the channel Simon Kingsley Dutton on YouTube, that's where all of these will go live. But maybe not the best place if you want to connect with me and have a chat. So at Kingsley Dutton, KingsleyDutton on Instagram. I'm always very active there. Very happy to chat. But man, pleasure as ever. Catch you soon. Thank you for listening to the Self-Made Podcast. If you're like me and like binge watching podcast episodes, click here to watch our latest episode. Or if you want to stay in touch and find out when the next episode goes live, click here to subscribe to the channel.